Hey guys, Jason here. Welcome to my final Mandalorian Season 3 review. That's right, today we'll be talking about the season finale, also known as Chapter 24, The Return. Now, before I get started, if you haven't seen this episode of The Mandalorian and you don't want anything spoiled for you, stop the video, head over to Disney Plus, check it out, then come back and we can talk about it. But now that we're past the spoiler warning, let's dive in, shall we? So this finale is not quite what I was expecting. Sure, it's quite a spectacle. It's full of action and drama and lots of stuff going on, and it certainly does wrap up a few plot points. But the last few shows have kind of featured a lot of cameos from legacy characters, animated characters coming into live action, connections to other shows and things or upcoming Star Wars projects. This one just was a little self-contained, and honestly, I'm okay with that. One of my biggest disappointments about this season of The Mandalorian was that it really didn't feel like the other seasons of The Mandalorian. And most of that was because there were a lot of unresolved plot threads from the previous season that had to be addressed this season. And I think they did a lot of that really well. And one of the biggest things that came about this season was, of course, the return to Mandalore to retake the planet. And this final episode certainly does that. It does a very excellent job. It brings that epic climax that was promised in the final moments of last week's episode to fruition. A battle between the Imperial forces and the people of Mandalore. And it was incredibly epic. You had a final showdown between Din Djarin, Moff Gideon, and Bo-Katan. Grogu got some action where he took on the Petroan guards. You've got Axe Wolves using the almost completely destroyed Imperial light cruiser as sort of a battering ram to hit the Imperial base on Mandalore. Just so much epic stuff. And yes, now we also know what Moff Gideon really was doing with Dr. Pershing and trying to make all these strandcasts. He was not trying to create clones for Palpatine. He was trying to create clones himself. However, that does not mean there's not still some sort of a connection. Speaking of the fact that Brendol Hux, General Hux's father, was part of the Shadow Council. And, of course, him having that connection to the First Order would mean that they would have likely used all this cloning research and technology that Moff Gideon was trying to use to further himself and for his own selfish reasons for the good of the Empire to bring Emperor Palpatine back from the dead. But one thing that this show does without really any kind of grandiose cameos or post-credit scenes is set things up for other shows, but also kind of wind things down for The Mandalorian. When I say wind things down, I mean move it into another direction. Personally, one of my biggest beliefs was that had they not focused so much on connecting the Book of Boba Fett with The Mandalorian and spent more time actually focusing on the story, the character, all aspects of the Book of Boba Fett, it could have done well on its own merit. But because of those lingering plot threads in Season 2 and the story they were trying to tell for Season 3, the Book of Boba Fett essentially becomes The Mandalorian Season 2.5. So I feel like the position we're left in now with The Mandalorian, he's no longer on this quest. He's going to go back to being sort of a bounty hunter, this time working for the New Republic on a under-the-table basis, thanks to his little side deal with Carson Teva. And he's also going to be training Din Grogu, his now adopted son. I thought that was interesting, too. We found something out about Din Djarin's name that we didn't know before. So turns out Din is the surname, not his given name. So that's an interesting thing. But now we can kind of go, for a potential 4th season and moving forward, we can go back to formula. But that also means that moving forward, they've kind of winding down the Mandalorian story, bringing it to a simplistic premise once again, means that those dangling plot threads may not necessarily need to be addressed right away. So it allows these other shows such as Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew to perhaps carry on those dangling plot threads, but it means that they also have the freedom to move on their own without having to rely on that close connection to the Mandalorian. So I don't think it's crazy to say that we're probably not going to see the Mandalorian and Grogu for a while, but it's also possible that they may make a cameo or, some kind of background appearance or something somewhere along the line. I just don't think, because of the fact that we've wound things down with this finale, that we're going to be seeing much of them moving forward. And I think that's a good thing, because I feel like it would help these other shows stand on their own if they didn't rely on their connection so much to The Mandalorian. Yes, they owe a lot to The Mandalorian. Ahsoka kind of got her whole show from her appearance on The Mandalorian. And this show, Skeleton Crew, from what I understand, is going to have some of the pirates that were introduced in this season of The Mandalorian as their main antagonists. So there are still those connections that exist. It's just you don't need to use The Mandalorian just to kind of swoop in and save the day. So I think that's a good thing. I think it's good that these shows can stand on their own 2 feet. And I don't think Ahsoka is going to have that problem, just because of the popularity of her character alone and the fact that the show is revealed to have these connections to Rebels and the Clone Wars and the expanded, the former expanded universe. So I think the show that would really, really suffer if, they used Mando and Grogu as a staple of the show would be Skeleton Crew, because those are new characters. It's a new thing. And the temptation could easily be to bring these characters into this show to give it some kind of boost so that people would watch it more, but then it would just become more about those characters than the characters we're being introduced to. I feel like Skeleton Crew would benefit from having some connections to The Mandalorian, but not to be completely reliant on The Mandalorian, if that makes any sense to anybody. But overall, I really enjoyed this episode of The Mandalorian. It was quite a spectacle. It was the perfect way to cap off the season. I think it was the perfect way to wrap up this part of Din Djarin and Din Grogu's story for now, because of course that's all going to be blown up when we get to the inevitable crossover that these shows are heading for. But yeah, I think it's a nice, satisfying spot. You're not left at the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen next, unlike the season 2 finale. I thought that was a pretty bold and satisfying way to end the season. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and give this episode, Chapter 24, The Return, a 4 out of 5. I thought it was pretty good. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you thought of Chapter 24, The Return, down in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there anything I might have missed that you wanted me to talk about? I want to hear from you. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to click the like button. You want to see more videos, don't forget to subscribe. Click that notification bell so you can get updates on all my future videos. You can also follow my social media pages. I got links down in the description of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And until next time, this is the way. Bye.